And so now we're here. Firstly, ignore the head and ignore the quality of this video. I wanted to upgrade the quality and my hairline, but neither were successful. But after 2 extremely eventful years of study at Coastal Carolina University, my time in the Music Technology Master's program has come to an end. Given the freedom to sculpt our capstone project however we decided, the choice for me was clear. I set out to write, arrange, engineer, record, mix, and master an entire work of original music, but I wanted to somehow make this different. I've recorded albums both out front as an artist and behind the scenes as a producer and musician. I wanted to make this experience to be a little different from all of those things though. I decided to create something new by going back to an idea I'd stored away a long time ago. It was really a simple question. What would happen if a career sideman just one day created something he liked? What would happen if he moved from the side of the stage to the front with something that nobody expected? Like, how would that go over? Most of my musical career has been spent at the side of the stage, so I knew I could take this idea and create a musical setting. I had the concept. Now it was time to get the inspiration. Logically, for this capstone project, I would want to use artists, techniques, ideas, etc. that I was introduced to during my time in the program. I realized immediately that I wanted to use The Night Fly by Donald Fagen as my main musical inspiration.
Ruby, Ruby, how I want you, like a ghost I'm gonna haunt you. Ruby, Ruby, when will you be mine?
I was introduced to this album during my first semester, and I've been addicted to it ever since then. The things that stood out to me were the creative musical progressions, the whimsical, almost playful lyrics, and the incredible background vocal stacks. The compositions, the arrangements, the performances, the lyrics, and overall musical experience truly makes it a masterpiece in my eyes, and something I thought would be a good experience to try and make the 2020 Demetrius Dr. Capstone Project version. James Taylor's Hourglass album was another one that I was put onto while in school. I wanted to use this as inspiration as well, primarily lyrically.
These little people were good to me. Oh, I wanna shake some hands. Somebody line them up, line them all up.
I drew inspirations from things outside of school as well, all-time greats like Total, Take 6, many others. Alright, I'm inspired. Time to write. Many things led to the songs on the project, including a desire to arrange an a cappella song, upcoming life changes, and resistance to the urge to deny what I liked musically. But for this presentation, we'll focus on one song. So the song that I want to focus on for this presentation is a song I wrote entitled Facts. When I first was starting to write, which took the longest time out of the entire project, I wanted to write something that was different outside of what I was comfortable with. And so I heard this line. I kind of like the idea of the melody line going up and landing on this C major 7, C major 9, because the melody line is up there. And then I heard it, started grooving with it. I think about everything logically, so I wanted to make it a phrase. So I had that first line, had the second one. I said, let me hold it out a little longer, and then I'll create some suspense. Go back into the second one, and I knew once I did that I wanted to go into another section so that I could make it an entire loop. So I ended here. What could I do differently? I can set it up to go toward the 6, and that's an easy transition. I was like, let me think of something to make it a little different. So instead of going there, I made it a major transition to go to the major 6. I was thinking I could do a temporary key change, but as I was starting to play it, I wasn't feeling it. But I realized I could do that same melody line and change the chord that would lead me back to C major. F sharp half diminished chord right there. And I thought, let me get a descending line, something like that, that'll lead me back to where I want to be. Because I heard that chord first, and I had that D over the F. And when at that time we were working a lot in Dr. Fowler's class about Lydian motion and having Lydian ideas, so I knew I could do that G over F and kind of have that Lydian idea. Contrary motion, do the same thing. Back down, and I landed in that C on the E flat, which just led naturally to playing that C minor or the E flat. I kind of like that idea. Da, 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 da. And once I got there, logically, there's only one place for me to go back to the 1 or whatever I wanted to do. And that's to the dominant 2 to the 5 sus. And so, in that moment, I had it. So I had my verse, and then it was time for me to go to the chorus. And I knew I wanted to go to the minor. After that sus chord, it felt good to go here to the A minor. I had that groove, boom, boom, boom. I heard like a Michael Jackson kind of thing. I just kept going up with the line. That was the premise of it, the basic idea. On here, I said I can go to F and give it a different feel, so it has 2 halves of the chorus, and then go down, and that'll lead back to the A. So it creates like 2 halves for the chorus. I knew I wanted to do something with the bass. I thought of Donald Lawrence lines and Cedric Thompson and all those guys that have the bass and the lower keyboards doing the same line. I wasn't really feeling that. So I said I could outline the chord, and that's a move straight from those guys. Instead of playing I played just to give it a little bit more density, give it a little more body. That was my chorus. So I had a verse, I had a chorus, and it was like, what else do I want to do with this? Because I don't want to make it too complex as far as form, but I also don't want to make it too simple so that it's not interesting. So I said, let me do a bridge. I'm gonna do a bridge, and that'll be it. I landed here, and my next chord I went to was C sharp half diminished. I can do the same descending motion that I'm doing in the verses. So I did that same exact thing, but it almost be like I modulated to the key of G. So literally the same progression. Once I got here, I said I can going back to wherever I wanted to. Just kind of work the melody line out. Good transition that makes it sound like I'm doing something a lot more complicated than what I'm actually doing. That was it. I had the music to my song. Now it was time to write the words. So the first thing I wrote in the song was actually the chorus. When I was making all I could hear was, the fact still remains, I love you. And I knew that would be the last thing anybody would expect me to write. So that's exactly what I wanted to go with. So when I initially wrote the verse, my thought was that was going to be the melody line. When I started like playing with it and started trying to write things, it didn't feel good. I said I could have that as a counter melody and an instrument while I still have a different melody singing. So it's kind of what I was hearing, something like that. I had that chorus line that the fact still remains, I love you. And that made me think my love for my wife is a fact. It's not something that has to be questioned or anything like that. So I started to try to think of a creative way to incorporate that in the verse. And what I came up with, actually driving to school one day, was having different facts and comparing those to my love for her. So I was like, okay, what kind of facts do I want to put in the song? The idea came, every aspect of the facts be about something related to love. So the first thing that came to my mind when people think about the most romantic city, they're thinking about Paris. So I literally typed in Google, facts about Paris. And one of the first ones that came up was that Paris only has one stop sign. So, did you know there's only one stop sign in Paris? Literally came from that. And once I had that idea, it just kind of kept going. I kept thinking about things and Googling facts about it. So a really logical way to think about writing the song. And I kind of went from there. So I knew I wanted the first verse to be about telling her facts about these different things. The second verse the same way, leading into the chorus, which is that my love for you is a fact. I always think about bridges as a connection of the song. If you don't understand what's happening by the bridge should explain to you what's happening. So I said, these facts will always stay the same, just like our love, like really simple, but that it brings the entire song together. So once I was there, I knew I wanted to transition from, did you know about these facts? I hope you know about things that I hope she knew how I felt about her. I hope you know you're the best gift I've ever been given, and you by my side makes me so much better. And it kind of developed from there. 3 or 4 days the entire song was written. After all the songs were written and completed, I called 3 people I'll never do music without. My brother, CL Baxter on drums, my first cousin, Levante Green on bass, and probably the greatest vocalist I know. And yes, I'm a little biased. So here we have my rhythm session. I had my rhythm section one day, and actually at the session there was only drums, bass guitar, and I played the RD 2000 on pianos as a placeholder. I wasn't planning on using any files, but I just wanted to get the feel of us playing the songs together. So I'm going to go ahead and play a little bit of the session files. As you can hear, I have a lot of the overdub files in there. If I go through the files individually, I can start with the drums, and I can kind of show the mics and also the preamps that we used. So here's the drum set by itself. Click off. As you can hear, I got pretty decent files. I can bring up what I used. So the kick in, we used the Audix D6 mic, and we sent it through the API one. That just always a warm sound to me that I really enjoy. And kick out, we used the AK-47, and I had it about 3 feet out, and it was a little above the kick drum to try to get a lot of the boom from the kick drum, but also some of the snare, so we could blend that in a little bit. And then on the snare top, we used some 57 and went through the API. I kind of really like using the APIs on the kick and the snare to sort of get that cohesion even before you start in the mix. They start to have that same kind of coloring going into the box. On the bottom, we used another 57 and went through API 4. The hi-hat, we used the KM184, and we went through our Neve preamp. On the first time, we used the MD421, and we just sent that through the Avid. It doesn't really need a lot of coloring, just trying to capture that sound, that tone of the toms. And the same thing with Tom 2. We used the Audix D2, and we went through Avid. Then the same thing with Tom 3. We used the D4 and went through the Avid. With the overheads, I like using the Pacifica on drum overheads because it has that high. It kind of gives that sheen a little bit, that high sheen that I really like in the overheads. Definitely the C414s. That's my go-to when I'm recording overheads. They really get a nice cymbal sound, but get a nice drum sound as well, so you can use them to capture the whole drum sound, just not just the cymbals. The bass was DI, and we just used the Universal Audio preamps. I think we got a pretty decent bass file. One thing you will notice is I have the volume really jacked up. And that's because we recorded the bass at a really low volume. I didn't want to go through a compression, but there's a lot of differences in the dynamics of his playing. He's slapping, and we really didn't want to clip it. Kyle did a really fantastic job of engineering. Him and Tim, they helped me to set everything up and get the levels going, and then Kyle just recorded very well. He did a really good job. I thought we did a good job of giving ourselves room to push it on the mixing end without clipping going in at the front. Yeah, that's when the overdub session started. And I think the first one I actually did was organ. I recorded the organ. I actually used 2 drum mics. I used 2 Audix tom mics, and I put them on stereo. And then I used a Sterling 51 LDC, a large diaphragm condenser, and I put that on the bottom. It's a technique that I've been using a lot on gospel tunes, and it just kind of works out for me. So the goal is to get the stereo image from the top, and then you get the meat and the girth from that bottom mic. If I turn this up, you can see it becomes a lot more mono, but then you get a lot of the bottom. So blending those 2 together worked really well. I had Tim Hardwick to record some guitars, and he sent me some great files. He actually used an R10 mic and an SM57. And actually in the mix, I think I used both of them. I blended them together to kind of get the tone. But he recorded great files. I really like having a guitar player at the bottom copying what the bass player is doing. So if you listen to them together. And then this tune was really special because it has that melody of the guitar that's on top of what's happening with the vocal. And he got a really good tone. He did a really great job with that. And then I put some synth brass stuff. I think this is my Triton keyboard. Yeah, you know, regular funk stuff. So the last thing we recorded that I added to this rhythm section session was the live piano, the acoustic piano. I really wanted to record a live acoustic piano, and we had some failed attempts at Coastal. We're trying to get that to work, but I finally got down to True Phonic recording in Charleston. Elliot Elsey, the engineer, he did a wonderful job. So I got these files. He actually gave me an abundance of piano files. What we have is 414s that he put inside the piano. He put DPA mics inside the piano, and then he had 3 sets of R22s that he put around the piano, as well as a pair of U87s that he had a distance a ways off from the piano to kind of get the room. I used a blend of all of these in the mix to get the sound that I wanted. The 414s and the DPAs were what I used the most because they were inside and they kind of got the closeness. The DPAs really got the pads. The 414s really got the hammers. That was all of the files from the rhythm section for the song. So after we recorded the rhythm section session, it was time to record the vocals. Rinth and I went up to Wheelwright Studio at Coastal, and we were laying down her lead vocals. We used the AK-47 mic, and we went through the Universal Audio preamp.
Did you know that your ring finger runs directly to your heart?
Yeah, so we got really clean, crisp vocals, which is all I was looking for. There was a hum in the room that had to kind of be dealt with a little bit. But other than that, we got some really good files for her vocal. Her chorus was actually recorded at the studio as well.
Fact still remains. I love you.
And so I recorded my vocals on the Warm Audio 47. Did you know there's only one stop sign in Paris? And that bald eagles have a 7. Clean vocals was all I'm looking for. And this wasn't a lead focus for me. This one was really about me being on the side line compared to her. So I knew my vocal under hers would work. Did you know there's only one stop sign in Paris? And that bald eagles have a 7 foot. Got a really, really good performance from her. A decent performance from me, and together I think they work really well. And so after we recorded our songs, it was time to go ahead and mix them. And here I have the mix session for Facts. And so what we learned in our mixing and mastering class at Coastal, we studied in this book, Mixing for the Small Studio by Mike Sr. And we were instructed that when we first got our files, we should get a good balance. So as you can see, I've turned my processing off. When I'm thinking about mixing, I want to start with the drum, to start with the kick and the snare, and I go from there to get a good balance. Here's the balance I got for my drums. As you can hear, we have some placements. Files we have are fine, but just kind of enhancing it, going to the next level a little bit. So after I got my balance of my drums the way I wanted them, I added my bass in. And as you can see, I have my processing already happening. Because if you remember, we recorded the bass at a low level. So I wanted to go ahead and get the level to where I want, so that when I started putting it where I wanted it at volume-wise, balance-wise, it would already sound the way that I envisioned in my head. So I have a CLA LA2A compressor on here. I'm doing a little bit of compressing mainly for the gain, and I have a max bass that's adding in a little bit of the bottom range, gives that sub frequencies where I wanted them, and then I did an R compressor to mesh everything together a little bit more. I also have a Saturn on here that's bypassed right now. I automated that to only come in during the slap part, so that the higher frequencies there will kind of be accentuated a little bit. And then I brought in the guitar mutes because they really accentuate the bass. They add a little texture, a little bit to the bass playing the same part. I have Tim's 2 files, and I have just some plugin. And so after I did that, I went to the chorus to do the same thing, just in a distorted way. So after I did that, I went to my quarter instruments, and I started with piano. Here's the balance I got. I added in the rolls. The rolls was just as a underbelly of the piano part. And then the organ I wanted to use as texture in the quarter instruments. So I went ahead and went to the synths, and these weren't really to be meat, it's just adding shimmery and shine to the top. Things kind of need to be moved up and up. After I did the synths is when I went ahead and started doing my processing, because the guitar line, I knew I wanted to sit on top, so that would always be moving and kind of fitting in where it could. So I turned all my processing on, and on the kick, I used the LA2A compressor. On the snare bus, I used SSL channel, and I'm doing some compression on that. That also gives it the color. On the tom bus, I'm using this vitamin plugin to kind of give it a little bit more definition. And then on the cymbals bus, I'm also using an SSL. I also have a drum parallel, and I'm using this H comp. I'm just trying to get the transients to come up a little bit more. I also have my claps. I didn't talk about my claps, but they just happen on the chorus. I just have an EQ on that. They're taking up a little bit of space of the vocal, I think, sometimes. And then I just brought up the high some. And then I actually have this, but I'm only doing this in the choruses when it's doubling that bass part. And so I just wanted to bring out the bass a little bit more during that part. Have an SSL compressor on the organ, and that's all for my music. Yeah, so after I got that, I went ahead and had my lead guitar. I knew I wanted that to sit on top. I have an LA2A on the bus, and I'm setting to a reverb that I haven't brought in yet, but that's about all. I I sent them to the right a little bit because I have the organ in the left to give it a full wide stage. So after I did the music, I went ahead and went to the background vocals. The background vocals happen in the chorus, and when they're happening, there's no lead vocals happening, there's no ad-libs. So I knew I wanted to have a good volume, and I wanted it to be very present. For the most part, I rely on a lot of automation. I think that gives me a little bit more control. So if you notice, I push it up on the word you. I even clip gain some of them because it wasn't really coming out the way I wanted it to.
The fact still remains, I love you. The fact still remains.
Same thing on this one.
I love you.
I'm using the SSL channel. It's not really doing a whole lot of compression just for the tone. I'm using the R compressor. I'm just rolling off the lows, vitamin. I'm actually not using this a whole lot, but I wanted to add those highs in a little bit more. Oh, also I'm sitting into a parallel compressor, which I'm using the LA76 to get the transients to push out a little bit more. And then I put a de-esser after it because a lot of compression was making this sound really, really prevalent. After I did that, then I started adding in my reverbs. And the first thing I did was call it a short drum verb. But after I was listening to the song, I think I have it a little longer on my snare drum. I'm using the R verb. I think that, like I said, I think I have that a little bit longer for the medium and also an R verb, a medium room preset. For my long drum verb, I'm using a true verb plate. For most of my music, I either send it to the wood room or I send it to a plate that I use with the IRL. So if you hear with my background vocals, I did a lot of automation. I have a long delay that's only happening sometimes. I'm only turning it on at certain words. I wanted to have it on remains, logically thinking if something remains, and I wanted to remain in your ear.
The fact still remains, I love you. The fact still remains, I love you.
Yeah, so it gives a really cool effect, really cool, for me anyway. I like to think logically like that. And so it gives it a really cool remaining effect. And I did this, everywhere throughout the track. I'm automating everything all the time. So after I got my reverbs and everything where I wanted, it was time for the lead vocal. As you can see on my lead vocal, I'm using a lot of the same plugins. I'm using the EQ, I use the LA2X, SSL, Vitamin, and then the de-esser to bring down the S's a little bit. I actually sent it to the same background vocal reverb, the reverse setting. I also sent it to a lead slap. I started dialing in my lead vocal. I put her in the middle, and then I moved me over to the side to kind of create the illusion that she's singing right in the middle. She's the lead singer, and then I'm off to the side, maybe on piano or something.
Did you know there's only one stop sign in Paris? And that bald eagles have a 7-foot.
So if you hear, there's a lot of automation going on with effects as well. If you look at the lead slap, I rolled this for the entire verses. When we get to the end of the phrases, I would boost the level up a little bit and I'd bring it down.
Did you know there's only one stop sign in Paris?
By this point, it was about automating levels and fine-tuning, getting it where I want. I got it down to the mix. So after I finished the mixes of all my songs, I went ahead and did a mastering session, and I wanted to do everything in the same mastering session so I could get the volumes to the same level. I tested out some different techniques of how I wanted to master everything, and what worked the best for this particular song was the Ozone Elements plugin. What I did at first, I just went to Master Assistant. I just kind of played with the settings from there. I brought the threshold, I think I brought it down a little bit actually. Equalizer, kind of made it a little less drastic than they had it. With the Imager, they actually didn't have this at all, but I wanted to make it a little bit wider, so I just went a little bit to the wider side. So when I'm mastering, I'm using different tracks to compare the volume to, and for this one I believe I used Total's Georgie Porgy, just to, obviously they're not like the same style, but to get a similar volume level.
I just need contemplation.
I also use the analyzers, and they're all hitting the same spots. I'm not really worried about how they look. I'm worried about how they sound, and to my ears, they kind of sound the same. A couple of different takes, couple of different techniques, and finally I had the master that you guys hear.
Did you know there's only one stop sign in Paris? And that bald eagles have a 7-foot.
So that concludes my presentation, and with that, my graduate career. So grateful to have attended Coastal and been a part of the inaugural NTM class. I'm going to miss the guys, but I know it's only upward from here on out. So with that, peace.
Your